You can clap if you want.
Welcome to a Masterclass with Richard Stoltzman. You're joining Prince William County Public Schools Music Department and the Education Department from the Kennedy Center in our first collaborative venture. We're delighted to have with us today Richard Stoltzman, master innovator with the clarinet. For those of you who may not know all of the details of Mr. Stoltzman's brilliant career, he has performed with over 100 orchestras as soloist. He has a list of Grammys to his credit. For those of you in the younger audience, you may have seen him on Sesame Street, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. He also has 35 recordings on the RCA label. Are you impressed with yourself, Richard?
Totally.
You should be. You also, I believe, have done the only clarinet recital at Carnegie Hall.
Mm-hmm.
Is that rumor true?
Yeah, that's true, yeah. In fact, Benny Goodman was in the audience.
In what condition?
He was alive and well and very, very happy.
We welcome you to Prince William County and invite you to share with our audience the reason that you're in the Washington area.
Well, I'm here to play the Mozart Clarinet Concerto. Now, I don't know how many of you out there are clarinetists. I know that we have a lot of clarinetists in the audience, so hopefully you recognize that little stuff that I played at the beginning as not just music for filler for the credits, but the... Anybody remember? It's the second movement of the Clarinet Concerto, and a little bit of the last movement kind of interpolated into it. And I'm playing that with the National Symphony on Friday night, which is tonight, and Saturday night at the Kennedy Center.
And one of the students in the audience was sharing prior to the airing of the program, her having gone last night to watch her fingers work. As I was listening to you play, I wondered how you came to discover the clarinet as your instrument.
Well, I didn't really think of it as my instrument. I thought of it as my toy. Because when I was about 3 or 4 years old, I was kind of crawling around, maybe it was even more 2, crawling around on the floor, searching around underneath interesting objects, and I found underneath my mom and dad's bed a little case, and when I opened it up, all these little pieces of wood fell out that you could roll around on the floor, you know, little pieces, and I didn't know it was a clarinet, but it seemed like a lot of fun to play with, and my dad discovered me doing this. Turned out to be his clarinet, but instead of getting very angry and scolding me, he decided that maybe I had some, tendency towards music. And finally, when I got old enough, he rented a metal clarinet, and I started learning what it meant to play music.
The teachers and the students that are in the audience, in the studio audience, I think they'd like to kind of hear about some of the stages that you've gone through in your musical career.
Well, I just had a normal upbringing. I went to public high school, and in the elementary school where I went in San Francisco, there was a teacher who came once just about every week, or sometimes once every other week, and if you brought an instrument in to him, any kind of instrument, he would teach you a scale on the instrument, or 2 or 3 scales, and that's basically how I got started on the clarinet in school. But along with playing in school, I had the wonderful opportunity to just be part of my mom and dad's involvement with church. They liked to go to church a lot. In fact, my dad had an orchestra that he called the Stewart Memorial United Presbyterian Church Sunday School Orchestra, which is really just my dad on a tenor saxophone and my grandmother who played some chords on the piano, and I played on my metal clarinet kind of along with the hymn tunes. And so one of my early experiences was playing for people to sing, and I think that was a great influence on me as I gradually grew up and met more and more of the teachers who guided me. And I have to say that I guess there should be probably some teachers as well as students listening today. And all I can say is bravo and fantastic to be a teacher. Is a tremendous, tremendous, wonderful calling. I think I owe so much to my teachers from all different parts of my life, and I sometimes feel very bad that I didn't thank them all when I was with them. And sometimes, you know, when you have a good lesson from a teacher, you don't really stand up and applaud them and say, "Oh, bravo, bravo, great lesson." In fact, probably you say, "Oh my gosh, I got to really work now." But when you remember that each one of your teachers cares so much about you that they're willing to keep you on the path and guiding you in music, it's very important to try to remember to give that back at some point. So one of the things I've done as I've gone on in my playing career is try to remember what my teachers told me and incorporate it in a way that I hope is giving back to some people.
Well, we in Prince William County feel fortunate to be the beneficiaries of that vision and that philosophy. I wonder if you would explain to the young people who are here with us and people who are viewing the difference between what you will be doing in this master class and what happens in a concert.
Okay, well, it's a big difference because in a concert, of course, you have an audience here and some people are yawning and things like that, but it's a different feeling because in a concert, people are coming, primarily they bought tickets or they've been invited by friends to come and enjoy an evening in a beautiful hall with acoustics that send the sound around, and people hear whole works. Sometimes, for instance, the Mozart Clarinet Concerto lasts for half an hour of sound. In a master class, it's not really the audience part to kind of just enjoy a nice concert, or even for the people who are watching on TV to kind of just sit back and enjoy some pretty playing, because actually I will probably interrupt anybody who's playing, and we'll talk about the music, and we'll try to search out ways that music affects us and what we do to make music better. So it's not really performance, it's more of a kind of capturing of some knowledge that we share together as a student and a teacher, and hopefully you'll take with you.
Well, we'll introduce the audience to what Mr. Stoltzman is going to be doing today with 3 of Prince William County's clarinet players. There will be 3 students. One is Thomas Dean, another one Kimberly Shires, and Pam King. Those students will play with Mr. Stoltzman in a master class setting for approximately 10 minutes each. And then at the end of that time frame, those of you who are here in the studio audience and those of you who are watching will be able to ask Mr. Stoltzman questions. And so without further ado, I invite you to observe a master at work.
Hi, Tom.
I'm Stolzman.
All right. Now, Tom, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Thomas Deem. I'm a junior, and I go to Hylton High School.
Great, great. And what did you decide to play, finally?
I decided to play the first movement of the Clarinet Concerto.
Okay. This is the first movement of the Mozart Clarinet Concerto. Okay, great. You want to just start off? Okay, Tom, no, I'm just going to stop you right away. I told everybody I was going to stop you, and it's not that there's anything wrong. But, you know, since you've just been sitting here for about 10 minutes listening to us talk, your reed is probably a little dry, don't you think?
Yes.
Now, I usually keep this cap on the mouthpiece pretty much all the time until I'm ready to play. Even when for instance, when I go out on the stage to play this piece, you know, at the Kennedy Center, I keep the mouthpiece cap on the mouthpiece. Even when I'm going out to stand in front of people. Sometimes I've noticed clarinet players in the audience will be looking at me and they'll be sort of pointing and say, "Your mouth, you know, it's still on, don't forget, don't forget." But the reason I do that is, first of all, sometimes if you're getting close, you know, shaking hands with the conductor, say, you know, and you're the conductor, and I happen to go like that, against his shoulder or something, crack, the reed breaks. Then what do? Uh-oh. So another reason is because this keeps enough of the moisture. Yeah. So lick your reed a little bit.
I try to with my reed.
Get a little saliva in there. You can even put a little saliva. Don't want to gross everybody out, but put a little saliva down into the. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And just play an open G. Okay. All right. Now, what I would be doing before I started to play this concerto is what you didn't get a chance to do, and that is sort of be, by yourself for a minute and play a couple of long tones. So let's pretend that you're just about to go on the stage, and before that you're going to play a couple of very beautiful, sustained long tones to kind of warm up your instrument, and then maybe a scale. Okay? So choose, what's your favorite note? What do you like, and what note do you like to really sound on the clarinet?
For a long tone, I prefer usually a low F.
Okay, good. Wow. All right. Pretty long, huh? Yeah. All right, that was very good. Now, let's try another way of doing that, okay? The same thing you did, but the same tone. I noticed that you were kind of letting some air out.
Yes.
That's great. No, not while you're playing, but before you took your breath.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Now, why did you do that?
So I could have some more breath when I play, to exhale first and inhale.
Mm-hmm. Now, that's what Tom said is very true. We often sit around with a little sort of stale air inside of us that we don't think about as stale air because we don't really need a lot. We're just sitting here and listening to this master class. But if everybody now went and pushed out as much air as possible, let me hear you do that. All right, and then took in a huge breath and kind of just almost sat on that air. What I want you to do is you did fine, but I'd like you to see if you can start that tone without your tongue. In other words, let me just give you an example. Taking that note, the low F. All out in it. And any extra air that you have at the end of the tone, let it out, okay? Now just try that. Without you don't have to go, that was something I added. Great. There it is. There it is. That's good. Come on, more. Loud. Okay, now back down. Softer. Hang on. Great. Now how do you feel?
Out of breath.
Out of breath. That's a good answer. But what about your heart? Is it going a little faster than normal? A little bit?
Probably, yes.
Yeah. Now, one of the reasons why I do this warm-ups before I play concerts is because I want to get my heart going a little faster, because it's a kind of feeling of getting nervous, but controlling the nervousness. So you're the boss of how your heart goes, okay? Now, let's hear the beginning of the concerto and play, all the way, let's go all the way down to here, okay?
All right.
Good sound. It says piano, but don't forget, if you have a whole orchestra with you, you might want to play a little more than piano. Okay, now let's start the beginning again, that first note. Let's play the whole first phrase down here. Okay. Now, what am I doing to you besides making you feel miserable? I mean, what do you feel?
I feel like, well, pushing in the mouthpiece.
Yeah.
Like
What I'm trying to do is, you see, the mouthpiece is in a wedge shape. So, you're probably very good at physics and theory and stuff like that. As you push more of this wedge into your mouth, what would happen to the inside of your mouth?
it would. Put this. It would open.
Right.
Open up.
And what I want you to keep working on as you play this piece is open sound, okay? So, because what I hear in your sound is a little bit, you know those subtones in the sound? What I want to have is, and that?
Clear.
Yes, and clearer you can get by taking your, what thumb is that?
Right thumb.
Right thumb, putting it underneath the clarinet thumb rest, and pushing up towards your embouchure and opening up the sound. And that will give you a lot of help. Thanks, Tom. That was great. I think now we're going to have another performer pretty soon. And as we change to the next person, I hope everybody starts thinking of questions, something you'd like to ask. That might be from what we just did with Tom, or what we might do with Kimberly. You can say it out loud.
Yeah.
In fact, you should introduce yourself. Is this going to work? Let's see. Let me just put it. Are you all right with that?
Yeah.
Yeah?
That's fine.
We're all wired here for sound. So. Tell me your name.
I'm Kimberly Shires,
Kimberly Shire.
and I'm from Woodbridge High School, and I'm a junior.
Okay. And what are you going to play?
I'm going to play a piece by Saint-Saëns. It's a sonata.
This is a piece by Camille. The C, he didn't put down. Maybe he didn't like people calling him Camille. I don't know. But anyway, he's a French composer who lived way into this century, actually. And this piece is Opus 167. Opus means the answer, right, work, or piece of music, or movements, or whatever. But it's a special term usually in literature and music that indicates a kind of piece. And this one is 167. Means he wrote 166 pieces before he was good enough to write for the clarinet. Now, that's not really what that means, but this is one of the last pieces he wrote. You want to start off?
Sure.
Okay. Do you feel kind of warmed up, more or less? Do you want to just play a long tone?
Sure.
Okay.
You want to do the F like he did?
No, you don't have to do anything that Tom did, but I'd love you to do what you do to warm up. How do you get ready for playing?
Well, I no particular thing in order, but
No, okay.
just play notes. So
Just play notes.
Just play.
Okay, but the thing is, sometimes, I find that a lot of people kind of get out the clarinet and just start wiggling their fingers, and play something. And I find that it's very important to get in your head what it is you want to sound like before you start, Can you sing that first note, for instance? That's pretty good. That's pretty good. That's right. Go ahead and try it again. Keep going. That was beautiful.
I'm not a singer.
No, I'm not a singer either. You want to hear me sing? No, you don't. No, but the reason why I was asking you to sing is because sometimes, not singing out loud, but singing to yourself, you put yourself into the music more. So you're not just pushing buttons, on the clarinet, and the clarinet makes those da da dee da, but you're going da 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 dee da, and make the clarinet sound like you hear yourself singing. Okay, let's play together. So there's 3 beats, kind of full big beats that the piano's going do 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 do, which is really a nice way to set the mood. We don't have that, so I'll just sort of pretend. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Keep going. Yep. It gets louder now. Get down to that level, the piano gets a chance to see how softly the piano can play, because sometimes I think we forget that the clarinet can play very beautifully softly, and it's a good challenge for your piano. Have you played this with piano? A little bit?
A little. I sat right with a friend one time.
Oh, good.
But that's it.
Yeah, but it's not. Okay, but if you know, one of the wonderful things about working on a piece of music is that hopefully after you do it by yourself, you play it with your friend or your musical pal or whoever it is that you're going to work with. It might be a teacher, but you get a chance to work at things together, you know. And one of the things that sometimes pianists don't do as well as clarinet players is get nice and soft. So at the end of this, the piano comes in, and try to remember that you want your pianist to start at the level that you left off, okay? And then go on. Now, one thing I would like to try again with this is could you make this whole first thing that you just played into one big arch or rainbow or something that goes, you know how we were talking about that long tone that swells and it gets on. Can you do that with this whole piece, with this whole first part of this piece? In other words, start soft and you kind of build it, and then where would you pick out as the place that's going to be the most brilliant, the most bright, the most full of sound?
Probably when wait, where was it? Right when you start crescendoing and going up to here.
Really?
I guess.
Well, my guess is that if you choose this place where it says starting the crescendo to get very big, you're going to run out of energy before you get to this place. Now, a lot of times when we see in a piece of music something that says crescendo, C-R-E-S-C-E-N-D-O. Now, what does that mean? Crescendo, it's an Italian word.
Get louder.
Get louder. But where do you get louder from?
From being soft.
Yeah, right, from someplace softer. So when I see crescendo, the first thing I think of, whoa, I better get down. I better get ready to start playing louder, okay? And the same thing with diminuendo. Where do you diminuendo from? Diminuendo is, right, getting softer?
Yeah, from getting loud.
Yeah, from a high point. Now, here's where it says diminuendo, okay? First time in the piece. So, I would pick someplace in this area to be your loudest, okay? And then kind of go away from there.
Okay.
All right? Why don't you try the whole thing together now, and but with that feeling in mind that we're going to start very, 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 very slowly, softly, and build up.
Okay.
Okay, here's a piano playing very softly. Now, the only other thing I would work on with this, it's pretty good, don't you think?
Yes.
Well, now you have to know.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, yes, it is good. You have to make those decisions too, you know, because nobody can always say you're good and you're bad. Sometimes you have to say, that was pretty good. That was better than I did it before. The thing that I would do to improve this is, you see all these lines that are on top? Of the, what do those mean to you?
To make the note kind of longer. And
Longer, but we're still in tempo, right? So
Yeah.
how can you make a note longer than, how can you make a note longer than it is? How can you? I don't know if you have, do you have the answer to this, I hope? No. I don't either. Well, what I think of is when a composer writes a line underneath a note, that what he means is that he wants you to give more attention to that note, to give that a little bit of a kind of a da da dee, a kind of helping da da da, just a little, like you see how you just smiled just then? If you can make those notes smile a little bit, now that's a weird thing, I don't know how you do that, but try as you keep playing this piece over again. Don't just be satisfied with, okay, I played all the right notes, I got louder, I got softer, that's good enough. Try to see if you can make those underlined notes smile. Good luck. That's a difficult assignment, but I think it's something worthwhile to think about, because music isn't just the notes, you know. And you want to be happy with this piece, so I think you should look for things in the music that really satisfy you, okay, and that you can give to the people when they listen to you play. Kimberly, thanks a lot. It was very good.
Right done.
I think you have to sort of unplug yourself, and we'll get to our last student. Great, thanks very much. Everybody want to clap a little bit and thank Kimberly? Thank you. And I think we're going to have one last student before we get into the questions. Hi. Let's see, Pam, you should introduce yourself. Are you all hooked up so that you can?
Yeah.
I guess so. Okay, great.
I'm Pam King. I go to Garfield High School, and I'm a senior.
You're a senior?
Yeah.
Wow. All right. And?
You want me to warm up?
Well, no, you don't have to. Just what are you going to play?
Concertino by Weber.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Opus 26.
Opus 26. Well, you know, the thing about Weber was he didn't have to wait till the end of his life to write a piece for clarinet, because he had a very, very good buddy who was a clarinet player. Do you know who that guy was?
No.
Well, his name was Heinrich Behrmann. B-A-E-R-M-A-N-N, Behrmann. And he was very good friends with Weber. They played together a lot, because Weber was a really terrific pianist. So he said, you know, please write some music for me. And he started writing not only pieces with orchestra, but things with piano, and they even toured together as a duo. So the only thing I think that Weber didn't like was that Behrmann got all the applause, because he was playing all this really flashy stuff and standing up there and impressing the audience, and I think Weber felt that he was not so handsome and really was kind of the, you know, like the ugly duckling in the group. But at any rate, he wrote some beautiful music, and so you want to just start right at the beginning of this?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. beautiful.
Thank you.
Sure. Can I ask you a question about it?
Sure.
All right. This sounded like a different kind of a note to me. This when you played it. Did you have any reason for that? I sort of liked it, but I've just wondered. After you finished it, and then when you played that note, you played it very beautifully, you know. But I just wanted, did you have any thought about that consciously?
Well, I wanted it to speak.
All right, that's a good.
I don't know. I was just thinking open, because my private teacher always says, think open, like open your jaw, open.
Yeah, those things are very important, of course, because you want to let as much of the air through as possible. There's no point in breathing all this air in and then choking it off. There's no point in that. Well, what I was getting at was that this, what would you describe this, this introduction as, if you were talking about it in words?
The theme?
It's a kind of, well, the theme actually starts here. It's like an introduction, but let me just suggest to you that Weber was an opera composer. He was very famous for writing very exciting pieces with lots of drama in them, and timpani rolling, and you know, lightning, and all kinds of things that you think of about in the theater. So he also wrote this beginning with, before you come in, dun, 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 dun. Okay, very, you know, kind of earth-shaking. And then you come in after this sort of rolling around with a kind of a, if you imagined a singer, some beautiful soprano named, you know, Pam, who walked on the stage and she started going, and then I don't know who that is. It's some guy who just barged in, you know. But in other words, playing different characters. Because what I felt was a different character was, after all, this whole first part, is it in major or in minor?
Minor.
Right. Okay. But suddenly, right here where you played that sort of special note is what happens suddenly. Goes into major for the first time. And it's like sort of, you know, okay, we've got into this argument, and there's a beautiful heroine, and there's a kind of a menacing, gruff, low person or whatever. But after those trills, kind of, you know, there's like a little bit of sun coming through. I don't want to get too corny, but you go into the major. And in opera, using major and minor and diminished and augmented chords are a very strong part of how the music gets across the message, you know, of some kind of drama going on. So all I was going to say was that I liked it. And I think now that you've, you know, thought about this a little bit more, did you know that he was an opera composer?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay, so, you know, as you go on now in this piece, we don't have time today to really get into the whole piece, but as you get onto it and you start playing the theme, you know, kind of, you know, think of somebody that you really like and is a good friend and is cheerful. And sort of name that theme after him or her, you know? And then as you go on with your variations, you might want to select other members of your family or whatever and play the piece as if you were like them or kind of describing them, because this is very descriptive music and the clarinet can do that very well.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Audience, it's a little clapping. Good. Okay. Now, think it's just about time to get some questions. Are we going to start with questions from the audience or questions from callers?
We're going to go with
okay. Well, let's do
audience, and if there are people who want to call in, they may do that, and I'll take the mic to people who want to ask you questions.
Okay, great.
Questions?
Questions? Planned questions?
Mr. Stoltzman, how has your work with classical clarinet, chamber music, and jazz influenced your music making?
Good question. I think that, as I said when I was talking to everybody at the beginning, I started off playing the clarinet because I just like to play for people, and I had a lot of fun playing with choirs in church. And it wasn't until a lot later that I heard classical music. See, my parents actually didn't go to symphony concerts, and when my dad wanted to show me and point out to me the best kind of music to listen to, he put on a record of the big bands. He would play Count Basie or Duke Ellington or Woody Herman or Les Brown, the big bands of the 1940s and 50s. And he'd say, now, Sonny, this is the good music to listen to. So this is the kind of music that I grew up with thinking of as the classical music. Then when I got into college, somebody dragged me to a string quartet concert. I didn't want to go. I never heard of a string quartet. When I saw these people on the stage playing with so much energy, I couldn't believe it. They were playing a piece by Alban Berg called the Lyric Suite. It was the Juilliard Quartet. And these four musicians were working at each other in a way I'd never seen in music before. And it was so exciting to me that at the end of that concert, I decided that I really wanted to find out what chamber music was about. Then a little bit later on, when I started playing with some wonderful jazz musicians, I discovered that you could talk and communicate through jazz in a way that was a little bit like chamber music. And I suddenly felt that I could be in all these worlds, that I could play classical music and enjoy it, that I could communicate with jazz musicians, and above all, that I could work in the chamber music area. And I think chamber music, somewhat like what we were doing today, playing musicians with musicians, is probably the greatest thing. Aha, oh, we have a caller. Okay, well, let's try this out. Someone's making a telephone call from Washington, D.C. Hello? Hello, caller. Do you have a question?
One more time.
I'm not hearing you. You're going to have to talk louder than that.
The different instruments that you play?
The different instruments.
Are there any special breathing techniques that you use for each instrument?
Well, now, I only play one instrument. It may look like I'm playing different instruments, but I'm only playing one. It's just the B-flat clarinet or the A clarinet, but both are just clarinets. I practiced some other instruments when I was little. I tried to play the flute, I tried to play the saxophone, and actually even the oboe.
Okay.
But the oboe was so hard to play. If you're asking me about breathing, I find that breathing is, for the oboe, is one of the most difficult because of the tiny, tiny little hole that you have to blow through to make the sound. And so when I practice breathing, it's always on the clarinet. And I think there are some ways that you breathe for each instrument. They're maybe a little different. But in general, when we talk, when I talk with Tom about just letting a lot of air out and then taking a lot of air in, that goes for pretty much every instrument. Does that sort of answer your question, I hope? All right, well, let's try another.
We have another audience question.
Mr. Stoltzman,
Yeah.
How would you go about teaching tonguing to a clarinet player?
Teaching what? Tonguing?
Tonguing, yes.
Oh, do you have a good tongue?
Could be better.
Could be better?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think articulation and tonguing, the thing we have to remember about using the tongue, it's part of how you are making yourself clear. And I start off working with articulation or using the tongue by leaving the tongue out of it altogether.
You want me to show it to you?
Not even thinking about that you have a tongue, and just blowing sound, like, say, now my tongue is somewhere down here. I don't know if you can see that on the TV, but it's right about here. Now, what I'm going to do is begin moving my, not the tip of my tongue, but a little bit back from the tip of my tongue and touch the reed. Just touch it and move it away. Now, I hope everybody hears that the reed still vibrates, okay? It doesn't stop. If you want to stop the reed altogether, then of course you push the tongue a little bit harder on the reed. But I think what we talk about when we use articulation too much is stopping, stopping, stopping. And in fact, we don't want to stop. We want the air to continue to go and the tongue to float on the air like this. See, so it moves kind of floating on this air rather than pushing back and forth. Oh, we have a call. Okay. Now this is a caller from Alexandria. Does that call? Let's hear your question.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for the tremendous show. You and Benny Goodman and Buddy DeFranco are my heroes.
Wow, well, you're putting me in a very, 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 very high class, but thank you very much.
Yeah, I have a two-part question. A, about the reed. How do you select it, and how long do you keep a reed? And second, on the barrel of the clarinet that goes between the mouthpiece and the rest of the horn, mine has a crack, and I put glue in there, but I think I may have to buy a new one. I play a buffet.
Okay. The first thing about reeds, I don't endorse any kind of reed, because I find that the companies really don't do enough to try to increase the quality of their reeds, but that's another matter. What I choose are heavy reeds, usually 5s, and I sometimes work on them by putting a little bit of my own oil from my own skin on the reed to kind of almost waterproof it, and flatten it out, usually on a file, so that it's very smooth, and then for the most part I just throw them away because there's hardly any of them that are any good. So I end up with maybe one out of a box of, oh gosh, I hate to admit this, but I end up with one reed out of sometimes 20 reeds. Yeah, I know, it's pretty sad. And as far as your crack goes, I have a crack in my instrument too now, which was filled with a kind of a solvent, not a solvent, but some kind of lacquer and so forth, and so far it's held up, and I haven't noticed any change. So I guess you could, if you haven't done it already, you could try getting a very good, repair person to seal the barrel if you really like the barrel, and try just playing with it. If it doesn't work, get a new barrel. Forget about it, because once you have little leaks in your clarinet, it's hopeless. Now we have a call from Reston. Hello?
Yes, Mr. Stoltzman.
Yeah.
I had a question, whether or not you play with double lip embouchure, and if you do, how do you manage to play standing up without a tremendous amount of pain?
Right. Okay. Now, I don't know if you can get close up with the camera. Can you see my mouth?
No, just a moment.
Should I get closer to the camera?
Okay, hold on. Just a moment, please.
If you could zero in, I don't know, the camera person could get in here a little bit.
Okay, I'm real in.
Well, okay, anyway, the thing that I need to show you is with my lips.
Uh-huh.
Okay, now, I have
Do you want me to give him a wrap-up, sorry?
these little plastic kind of aluminum and plastic coverings that I put over my top teeth and my bottom teeth, because when I had the choice when I was deciding to switch a double lip of either having my teeth filed, you know, so they would be round and wouldn't cut into my lip, or using these little covers to kind of keep my lip from getting all cut from my teeth. So that's what I've chosen to do. Now, the fact of standing up is definitely a problem, right. And I understand what you're saying. When I started playing double lip embouchure, I could not only not stand up, I could only play, say, 30 seconds, half a minute right. at a time. I had to build it up over a long time. So if you're playing double lip, be very patient. Okay. And don't expect that you're going to be playing the Mozart Clarinet Concerto next week playing standing up. The other, of course, thing is that I have pretty thick, fat lips.
That'll do it.
So that's part of it. Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sure.
Richard.
Oh, yes.
On behalf of Prince William County Schools, I want to thank you for being with us today.
You're welcome.
And all of the students and their teachers who are here. We'd like to thank the Kennedy Center Education Department for sharing you with us, and also the NSO, and hope that people will be joining you there this evening and tomorrow evening.
Yes, definitely. Please come to the concert. That's what this is all about. I mean, television's a great medium, but live performance, hearing the sound coming through the air right to your ears without any amplification is, I would say, a miracle.
And that's what we'd like to give you the opportunity to share with the viewing audience, as well as the young people and teachers who are in this audience. I know that you have a special talent as far as jazz is concerned.
Well,
and we'd like to invite you to share that with us, and any anecdote you might like to tell us about experiences of sharing this with other countries.
Yes, well, I know what you're talking about. There was a concert that I did in Germany at a very revered opera house called the Bayreuth Opera House, and they never, ever, 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 ever had anything but classical music. And when it was discovered that I was going to play a concert that included music of the Beatles, there was an uproar, and people called in to the presenter and said, "We must not have this happen in our sacred opera house." So she was very worried, the presenter, but she said, "Well, I'll trust you, you know, we'll try to do this. I hope everything turns out all right." And so I decided to play a very familiar tune that probably everybody in the audience knew, whether they admitted it or not, and then started doing some variations on it, and it gradually kind of left the classical world and kind of moved on into some other place. And this is sort of what it sounded like.